So, who's responsible in accepting substrates? Well, basically, premature paint usually occurs if the surface is not adequately prepared. The very act of painting a surface may be interpreted as accepting the surface as being suitable for painting. So guess what? The moment the painter has touched that surface, you touch it, you own it. That's it. Nowhere in the Australian standard does it say anything different. So that becomes an interesting issue as you go through things. And basically, so that means it's really important that you do surface preparation, because guess what? If you don't, it's going to be your problem and no one's going to jump up and save you. So we might have a look at this little video, and you can have a rest of listening from me.
No doubt you've heard it said that surface preparation is very important. This is because premature paint failure usually occurs if surfaces are not adequately prepared before painting. The Australian Standards 2311 makes the following comment. Surface assessment and preparation are particularly important as the painter may be held liable for any future failure, because the very act of painting the surface may be interpreted as accepting that surface as being suitable for painting. So, in other words, if you apply the paint, you are responsible if the coating fails due to poor surface preparation. Here are some important points to consider when assessing the substrate for the required preparation. Substrate conditions. Substrate conditions will have a bearing on the level and type of preparation required. Existing coatings. If there's an existing coating, does it need to be removed? For instance, is it peeling, bubbling, or flaking? Then it probably does need to be removed. Contaminants. What contaminants need to be removed? Is there dirt, mould, mildew, salts, rust, chemicals, or other things that need to be removed first? Materials. What are the appropriate materials to use? This will often be affected by the environment and the use of the substrate. Some preparation materials will break down in the sun and weather. Other products are not strong enough to withstand hard impacts and may not be suitable for doors and trims. Coating system. The paint system that is specified will have a bearing on the type of primer or sealer you will use during the surface preparation. These are just some of the main points to consider when assessing a substrate for surface preparation. You could probably identify other things to consider as well.
So when we talk about surface preparation, we need to make sure we're looking for contaminants, those types of things, effervescence, rust, any of those types of things. Just because the surface looks good doesn't mean it hasn't got contaminants on there that will give you grief. So you need to clean surfaces. And these are the shortcuts. I mean, the one thing about painting is there's a lot of opportunity for shortcuts. And with those shortcuts happening, that's where you're going to get your problems, and that's where you're going to get your defects coming from. So when you look at, say, the new construction area, if you're doing new construction or you're involved in new construction, often the painter will put the first coat of sealer on the walls and on things. Why do they do that? Basically to assist the plasterers in doing their pre-paints. But effectively, the moment you put that paint on, you're accepting the surface. So it's a bit of food for thought. You need to make sure you're working with appropriate people that accept it at that level. One of the things in repaints, obviously repaint's an issue. In maintenance painting, it's seldom necessary to strip off the old paint. This is actually a job that we did. It was Fernwood at Browns Plains. This was about a 10-metre high building, and the paint was coming off at about half a metre wide in big strips. Does anyone know why that would come off like that? What would be the main reason, do you think? Absolutely. More than likely, and I can tell you now, it actually did have water pockets in it. That was one of the issues. So of the painters, how many, can I just show over hands, how many of you have a moisture meter? 1. Okay, good. 2. Great. Because quite frankly, if you apply paint to concrete surfaces under a certain level, if you haven't got a certain level of moisture in that surface or lack of, so in other words, you can't paint it if it's greater than 20%, you're going to have moisture come through, and that's what's going to cause your delamination. The other issue that obviously is the bond breaker wasn't removed properly in the first place. They're the two issues you've got. So moisture comes into play when it comes to painting concrete, absolutely, and timber and plaster for that matter. So in every painter's kit, they should have a moisture meter. They're under $100. You can buy them from Bunnings for about $45 in their gardening department. So there you go. So the criteria for removing existing coatings is dictated by the soundness of the existing coating. We actually put chemical strippers on that and stripped it. In the end, we couldn't get it all off, and to get a good paint job, it meant we took the lot off. So how do we test if the surface looks good but we're not sure? Well, you've got an adhesion cross-cut test, and this is one of the ones they use. They primarily do it this way in protective coatings, not so much in architecture and decorative. The way we do it in architecture and decorative is basically you can do two cuts and then put your tape on it, tear it off, and if it lifts, you've got a problem. If you're talking about normal interior walls and ceilings, particularly on peeling ceilings and things along that line, what they'll do is just put the tape on, leave it on for 30 seconds and tear it off, and that's the quickest and easiest way to determine if you've got an adhesion point. And quite frankly, on older homes, you need to do that, particularly if you've got loosely bound substrates in older homes like calcimine and those types of things that you may have come across. They're the types of things that you need to understand.